Welcome back, everyone, to the Property Journey podcast, episode 15, and we have our very first guest in. Roy's joining us here. He's obviously not our guest.
I'm the host.
He's the host.
I'm the boss, you're the host.
I'm the host, you're the boss. And we've got Julie in from Kingham Property Services. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Julie is obviously best described as estate agent.
Yes, that's right.
And based here in Lurgan. So she's going to be obviously here to answer our questions, talk about her role as well. Obviously everything to do with estate agents. So Julie, just to introduce yourself, how did you sort of become involved in property?
I am in Kingham's now 18 years this year, I think it is. So I got involved. I have a banking background from before that and got involved in the estate agency about 19 and a half years ago when I went to work with Hugh Kingham in North Street for training to open up my own office, and during that time he decided to retire. So we ended up doing a deal and I bought him out.
Good timing.
Good timing. Well, it was 6 months before the recession, so maybe not such good timing. If I'd have waited another year, it might have been
changed your mind.
Exactly. But yeah, it all fell into place. Yeah.
Very good.
I know, because sometimes a lot of people don't realize actually how you can end up just it's not really a career path sometimes for some people. It's one of those ones where you start out maybe as you say, in another area, and before you know it, you're kind of in it, and before you know it, as you say, you're so many years into it.
That's it, 18 years in a blink of an eye. Yeah, it just all came together. It literally just fell in step by step, and I love it, and I do love it. Yeah.
It's probably one of those jobs where it's non-stop. As you say, it can be a blink of an eye because it's so quick.
It doesn't stop. Morning, noon, and evening, weekends, it doesn't stop. Holidays over holidays, you never get a break from it. But then that's the fast pace that you want. You know, if you wanted to slow that down, you could. That's just the way we work. Yeah.
Sounds a wee bit like you, Roy.
It is. When you're passionate about it, you can't switch off.
That's it.
I was away for a few days last week, and even at that, you have the laptop on.
Yeah.
2 or 3 hours in the morning, 2 or 3 hours at night, and even during the day, I was on the phone and sending a few messages, and back to the office here, do this, check that, phone that person, and phone a few clients too. It never stops.
It doesn't.
Never stops.
And you're getting ideas in your head, aren't you? Or you're remembering things, so you're always checking them out. Yeah. You are.
So what about Kingham's, Julie? What kind of, obviously as we said there, it's an estate agent, but for some people, most people know what an estate agent is. If you obviously mention an estate agent, they'll go, why they deal with property. But for some people, they don't actually know exactly what you do. So what sort of services then does Kingham's offer?
Mostly our main would be residential sales. We do commercial sales, and we do letting, management service, and finding a tenant, residential and commercial. We don't deal in any mortgage advice or anything like that, or legal advice, but it's really just down to the property needs is what we deal in, yeah.
And obviously then, as you say, the biggest market then is obviously your residential side. From that then, you're looking at doing, obviously the full marketing side of things then. So obviously for people selling their property, then you're obviously dealing with the buyers that are obviously looking to buy the property. So could you give kind of a wee insight into what sort of, nearly like a breakdown on what you would do maybe on a day-to-day basis?
So, God, I don't know if you have enough time on this. Where to start? It's probably better to go through, if you're using me to sell your home, if we start with that and then see what leads, because it has so many different things will come off that. So I think owners are under the impression that it's just finding a buyer, and it's never just, that's one, although it's an important aspect and that's what you need, it's never just that alone. The price has to be right to begin with of the property. It has to be staged right and looked right, where we would give the advice of do this or do that or do these tweaks. The marketing has to be right on all social medias and on the right portals. We then have in-house marketing, WhatsApp marketing. We work with mortgage advisors to advertise it. So there's all of that comes into it. Then you have all your legalities on it and your money laundering regulations and all of that sort of side to keep everybody right on. Then you market the house for sale and you put it online to find a buyer. You go through all of those stages, and then when your sale agreed, you through your bidding and putting everybody through that journey, what to accept, what not to accept. When you get sale agreed, again, that will continue. Then we work through making sure the mortgages are approved, the surveys are okay, that is progressing with the solicitors, you're talking about completion dates, what you need to do on moving day. So it's from start to finish process where we're in the background either talking to you directly or in the background trying to push things along, as Roy knows. Sometimes we have him tortured, don't we, Roy? So there's a whole process to it, and finding the buyer is, yes, it's the important element, but it's only one small part of it. So the day starts off with, depending on what stage of your journey you're at, where we take it over from. So that's our daily. That's the start of our day.
It's a valid point there, because a lot of people think, you know, an estate agent just, you know, they sell the house and that's it, they wash their hands and they walk away from it. But I know in my experience dealing with estate agents and the likes, you know, a good estate agent is, even though once it's sale agreed, they're in the background pushing everything along, making sure the solicitor's doing what they're doing. Has the buyer got in to meet their solicitor? Have they signed up yet? Where's it all happening? If sometimes there can be a few issues and things like that, and definitely a good estate agent helps do the mediation behind the scenes.
Because the deal's never done until the contract's signed, and it can fall through right up until the last day.
Until the money's in the bank.
That's it. So you really need to be watching it the whole way, and it's easier for us to do it because we can pick up the phone and ring the other estate agents in the chain, or the buyers, or the sellers, or we can ring and speed it up by doing that, which solves a lot of problems. Or ring management companies. So that, I suppose, being doing this for 18 years, I have a relationship with most of the solicitors, with most of the local mortgage brokers, with most of the other estate agents. So it's easy for us to just push it along a lot quicker than you could. You know, that sort of way, when you're only one person's details and we have them all. Yeah.
And probably, as you say, even just picking up on that point, the good thing is if you've been working with them for so long, you can nearly trust them, knowing that they're going to be doing what you need to do. So for example, if you're working with Roy, but you're also working with another mortgage broker, whatever it happens to be, you kind of know that you've got a trusted partnership nearly across the board to be able to get that transaction through.
That's it.
In terms of transactions, actually, this is maybe an interesting question, but roughly speaking, how many transactions? Because I know when you're saying there, you're kind of looking at each person and where they're at in the stage, whatever, but how many could you be managing roughly on a weekly basis or daily basis?
They'll all be at different stages. So you'll have some just sale, you'll have some just on the market. You will have then some that are sale agreed. You will then have your new build sites that are just booked, so they mightn't be ready to sign their contract for 6 months. So they're all at different stages. You could have maybe 60 going on at one time at different stages where you have to check in. And some of them, early ones, you won't need to check in for a couple of weeks. Other ones you need to be checking in daily. So it just depends. They're all in different levels of who needs prioritised at different times, depending on what their need is. Some sales go through and you need to do very little once you find the buyer, and other ones you could be on the phone working with them every day for 12 weeks. So it just, each one's individual. That's it.
You probably know quite a bit about that, Roy.
I do indeed. That's juggling the transactions and keeping them moving along. I have to say, only for the fact of having systems and processes, the staff know I'm a stickler for operations, and everything has to go through the jigs and the rails, and everybody knows once a transaction reaches a particular point, this has to happen, and only for that, transactions they'll just ground to a halt.
Yeah, they would.
Because you've just you've just that much hitting you all day, that many phone calls, emails, and what have you. If you don't have that system and that process in place, it just doesn't happen smoothly.
That's right. And you are one of the solicitors that's proactively trying to speed that along as well. So you're putting different systems in place to make that faster in that transaction period as well. Which is amazing.
You have to make it easier, because even from the ethos of my business is to make the conveyancing process as stress free as much as possible for the client. But even from a business owner point of view, it has to be efficient. And if you can cut down the number of emails received from a client or from a solicitor, or cut down the number of phone calls, that means it's more time where you're getting it completed.
Getting the work done.
Get the work done,
Get across the line.
Because we've talked about this on the podcast before. It comes from even the likes of chain transactions, and even Julie, we were talking about that before the podcast, where you're sitting there with potentially 5 or 6 or 7 different properties that are all going to be either bought or sold potentially on the same date, and even that managing side of things, where you're working with X amount of different say it is estate agents and different mortgage brokers and different solicitors and different buyers and different sellers. And when you throw all that into the mix, like it's not an easy process to manage either.
I think it's informing everybody beforehand and giving everybody that knowledge to know this is what happens on the day, this is what's expected of you beforehand, this is the rough times. It doesn't always go to plan. Get the kids minded, I think you'd mentioned this before, get the children out of the way, get the animals out of the way, sort everything out, get the cleaners booked for your house. So it's knowing all that beforehand. If you only know that on the day of moving, it will be stressful, there's no doubt about it, there's no getting away from it, even if there is only one in the transaction, because if it happens later in the day, you're running out of hours nearly for everybody to get help and to get this. So it's just being pre-organised and knowing that information. Yeah.
Have you found a change over the last 18 months in the chains are smaller now? Because I know after COVID, like 2021, 22, like there was many transactions where I would have had maybe 4 or 5 people involved in a chain, and it was just a nightmare trying to juggle all of that. Have you noticed that?
We don't have as many in a chain anymore at all. There's times we've probably had 5, I don't know if we've ever any more, and they're all ready to move into the next house at the same time. So no, tend to be 2 to 3 would be the most at the minute. There is one going on at the minute where there's 5 in it between 3 different estate agents, which will be fun when it comes to completion time, but we're not there yet. Yeah.
That's one to look forward to.
It is, yeah.
In terms of tips and tricks then, Julie, we obviously want to try and provide as many helpful information tips for our listeners. What about people thinking about, I've kind of got first time buyers here buying or selling your property, home movers, there's so many different people, but say for example someone buying a property, what would be your tip for them?
So if we're dealing with first time buyers, first of all, get mortgage approved. That is the very first thing you need to do. Do not be coming looking at houses when you don't know how much you can get, if you don't have that idea and that decision in principle, because you'll just get yourself annoyed and upset that you'll fall in love with the house, you won't be able to afford it, and it'll be a dampener for you straight away. So get mortgage approved. Know that your credit, most first time buyers are far better now than what they were years ago anyway. They're mostly organised, they have their deposits, or they know the ownership criteria, they have their pay slips. So do that end of it first. And sometimes when you do that to get mortgage ready, it might take you 6 months to get ready. There's nothing wrong with that. Do what you need to do in that 6 months. Other times you're ready straight away. So start looking then, and be prepared to look at a few houses. Don't buy the first house that you see. Come and look at a few. Depending on the market, depend on whether you can look at stuff over budget and maybe negotiate down, but it'll depend on the market at the time in case it goes up over the price of the house. But go and look at a few. Bring parents with you. Depending on how your relationship is with your parents, either bring them at the start or bring them after you agree it. But
and the in-law, bring the mother-in-law.
Maybe all the same day and get it over with. But do get a second opinion. So when you're starting out, you don't know what to look for. You don't know, oh God, I didn't notice there wasn't any storage, or I didn't notice there's any back access, or whatever it is. I didn't think to look at that. So bring somebody that's got a bit of experience with you for a second opinion before you go sale agreed. So, and be flexible with your times. I've been able to see we do evening viewings and weekend viewings, but some owners have a criteria of when they will let you in for viewings if they've young kids or different work shifts. So you need to be flexible and be able to go on lunch times or go earlier in the morning, or so if we have a couple who'd say we might get them in for 3 weeks, and although we can do it, owners can't. So make yourself flexible to be able to get in, be able to get a half an hour of work, or be able to go on your lunch hour, or work through what you need to get, if it's the house for you, to get in and see it. So that will start off the first time buyers. Yeah.
And if you were, obviously, because we've talked about it there, Roy's piece of advice if you're selling a property is obviously speak to your solicitor pretty much straight away.
Definitely. To
get your title deeds in.
Exactly, yeah.
Is there anything from your end that you would say would be, if you were thinking about selling?
Yeah, you need to get your house right. Your house has to look right. It mightn't have been as important. Again, it depends on the market. The market's up and down, and the trends change, and what people want changes. Your house has to be presented right and our job is to get you the best price in the shortest period of time. And in order to do that, you have to present your house right. So you have to get the outside of it looking right, get your window box out, get rid of the weeds, paint it if you need to. It has to look well. Now, normally we would recommend you get 3 estate agents to make sure that your price is right. So there shouldn't be much of a difference between the 3 agents in the area. You will gel with somebody. And you will get a connection with somebody, and that's, well, hopefully it's always us, but that's who we would always say, that's who to go with. But you really need to knowing what your neighbour has sold for, or guessing what your neighbour sold for because you've seen the price on Property Pal, isn't the price that they've probably got. So you need an agent to come in to be able who has all that data that can tell you this is the price range you're going to get. You've got you've sunroom and they didn't, or whatever. So we'll be able to give you all that data and give the breakdown and listen to your agent. You know, by going £10,000 more than what your agent is recommending can be disastrous. You know, you could be chasing your tail and reducing because you've overpriced. So it's really important to sit down and listen to the professional on it.
Have you ever advised the vendor to have their house presentable, and whenever you went to take a look at it, your view on presentableness and their view is completely different?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, we'll see it on the pictures before it's live. So
Yeah.
when we get the photographs, so from the valuation stage, then the professional photographer will go out and we'll see it on those. So we can try and give tips to do it then. Not every vendor's going to do it. So we just have to work with what we've got and try and show it off in the best light and show people, you know, like a paint here. Most houses you're going to have to paint when you move in anyway, by the time you move the furniture out and marks and scuffs, and show them the potential of what they can do with a backyard that isn't done, or a kitchen that needs replaced. Think of what you can get in here and just talk them through the vision of what they can do with it. Yeah.
I think that was actually one of the previous episodes that we've talked about was obviously, you know, fixer uppers and you know, some people's price point might not allow them to purchase a new build house, but they may be priced in on fixer uppers. And as you say there, you know, think about potentially replacing the kitchen, or the bathroom might need done, as you say, you know, like a paint the walls. You know, an older house isn't the worst thing in the world for some people. Do think it is?
But some older houses are gorgeous. They've got character. They're not exactly the same as every new build. It's what suits you, doesn't it? If you're handy, you know, an older house is no issue if you can do a lot of the work yourself. Your new houses are going to, you know, everything's done. You're not going to need to touch anything for 10 years or 20 years. But you won't get the same character with the new build as you will with some of the older stuff. Some of it, you know, the new builds are a very, very high standard of finish now. So each year that gets stronger and stronger and stronger. But you'll get a feel for what you want yourself. That's part of going around to see what suits you, what you like and what you don't like, and spending the time viewing instead of running in and buying the first property. Yeah. What
do you find for the first time buyers? Are they hungry to take on a house that needs work, or they prefer to walk into a house?
Prefer to walk into finished.
I was thinking that because when clients are in with me, I'm always looking at the house, because we'll go through, you know, maybe we need to check if there's a stove, is there building control for that, is there an extension, and I'm just looking and I'm seeing the houses and they're so well presented to the point where staging property now is probably a big thing for selling, to make it just to look spot on.
And I think when you're buying a new build, if you have got your money for deposit but it's leaving you with not very much left, the new build's the way to go, because you don't have to do anything. It's gorgeous, you can sit in it, you don't need to update it. Whereas you will have to work on the older properties, most of them you'll have to work on and do something to your own taste, and you can do it in your own time. But if you don't have a lot of outgoings after you're paying your mortgage, a lot of cash coming in, that restricts you. So it's down to everybody's individual. But see them all. I think that's the idea. Show houses are open on Sundays everywhere. Go get in and see what you like and what you don't like. And location, we're back to location, is just so important. So important. If you don't have children yet, look at the schools, you know. I think we're in Lurgan, a lot of people buy in Lurgan, so they know the schools and where the amenities is and where South Lake is and all of that. But location for reselling, if you're going to stay there 3 to 5 years, that's the sort of average time that they stay, unless there's a recession in the middle of it and you can't move. But then look at how easy is it going to be to sell your house again. You know, so all of that has to come into it. And your agent will advise you on that. If you're not sure of that, they will advise you on that. Yeah.
Because that is the thing. There's so many different wee bits and pieces that you have to think about. Whether if you are buying, even if you're selling, because if you're selling, you're going to be moving somewhere else, and it's why are you doing these moves, and who's going to be going where, and as you say there, the likes of schools and stuff. How long are you going to be in the house for? You know, are you potentially going to be starting a family? You know, am I going to have to move in 2 years' time? All these things all come into consideration. Which brings us on to the current property market. Now, myself and Roy done a wee episode 2 episodes ago, and we touched, essentially we were discussing the property market in Northern Ireland, how it currently is, because there's a lot of change going on at the minute. Interest rates are obviously have increased over the last year. So I just wanted to know kind of what your thoughts were on where you kind of see the property market now, where you think it might go.
It's changing every month. It really changes every month. So November, definitely last year was quieter with interest rates going up and up and up. November time that seemed to settle a bit and the market was very strong for it being winter, November, December, January. The spring rush hasn't hit. There's not as much stock on the market. And I'd seen a graph or a chart with somebody in the UK doing that, and I think Northern Ireland's down 3.2% on stock this year from last year. So you can feel that, but you can feel there's not as much stock out there. There is still buyers out there. Are they holding back a bit, waiting for interest rates to come down? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. If the right house goes on, there'll still be a bit of bidding goes on it. So if the right house goes on, a bit of within that 150 price range is very popular for first time buyers to start. But if something comes on that's extra special, it will bid. They'll be bidding on it as well. So there's buyers out there approved for mortgages. We need more stock to be busier. That's really what we're at the minute. The recommendation or the advice coming forward is that the interest rates are hopefully there's pressure on for them to be reduced at the Bank of England. That's going to kick in maybe come September. The start of the year we were hoping that was going to kick in the spring. So it definitely has an impact. The dearer the house is. For your first time buyers, not as much if it's going to be their home. And it's different for investors again as well if it's for their profit. But for the first time buyers, it's more about I think getting the right house. So if it's going to go down 0.25% isn't going to make a massive difference to them if this is going to be their home for the next 5 years.
See, that's what goes back to what you said at the start there. For first time buyers, you need to be organised and prepared because there's fewer houses on the market. So somebody looking at this who has no experience, they might think, oh, that's a bad thing. But that's just because people don't want to move. So there's less houses on the market. But anything that does come on the market, as you say, they're being snapped up fairly quickly. There's bidding being done on it. So that means if you're a buyer, you need to be prepared and be organised. Because if there's not much there and something good that suits you comes on the market, you need to be ready to hit it.
We had one sale agreed yesterday and the girl, and I think she just sat too long waiting. And she'd seen it and then she'd cancelled her second viewing and we were trying to get a hold of her to let her know and it just went sale agreed. And she rang and I said, it's gone sale agreed 2 hours ago. You've just missed it. And that's it. It's agreed for sale. The owner, although we can go to them with higher offers, we'll have to go and approach the owner. It's very rarely owner will take one. They'll say, no, I've done the deal. That they're going to have their time to get their mortgage approved and get this completed. If anything happens, we'll come back to you. So if you're not quick enough, you will miss out on the house that you want.
I think, and this is a discussion that we keep having, as you say there, the dearer properties certainly have been affected by the higher interest rates. When you would maybe look at a mortgage payment for one of those houses, it starts creeping into scary figures at the minute. But the demand for obviously first time buyers and new homes, new developments, I feel that no matter what the interest rate is, there's going to be a constant demand for that style of housing.
Right.
So no matter what, if these houses keep coming onto the market, they'll keep selling.
And Northern Ireland has been like a little hotspot from COVID really. It hasn't, although parts of it have slowed down, it hasn't stopped. I know the UK was affected a lot worse than us last year. So there is a hotspot and there's a lot of people come from the UK to buy here. So and our budgets are different now as well. Selling a £400,000 house a couple of years ago was, oh God, how many buyers are we going to find for this? Now you do have a few. The budgets of people have increased that can afford more. So that's all changing those as well.
And because no matter what way, and that's what I keep saying, the demand for over here, as you touched there, it nearly seems like Northern Ireland's on its own wee bubble. Yeah. As I like to say, we've talked there recently, Roy, about the news outlets discussing property prices have come down 3% or whatever it happens to be. I can't remember exactly, but when you delve down into the figures, Northern Ireland house prices has actually increased.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've been obviously discussing about how people need to kind of actually look at the market and speak to the key figures within it. So whether that's your solicitor, your estate agent, your mortgage advisor, make sure to keep speaking to them people if you are thinking about buying. So it's, in terms of the market, I see it as one that's going to just continue to grow. And I think, Roy, you touched on people coming across from the mainland.
I've seen a lot of people coming over, just the house price difference
is unbelievable.
There to here is unreal. They're maybe struggling with a mortgage over in England. They're selling up. They've got equity, and the equity's buying 3 times the size of a house here, if not more, and they still have money.
And with remote working, they can live here. Or what we find is that maybe the wife and children are here and the husband goes back and forth and travels to work over in London or wherever. So there is a lot of that going on.
I was in Port Stewart there 3 weekends ago and just bumped into a couple down at the beach, and they were telling me they're both from England and they both still have their jobs in England, in London, but they work remotely and they fly over at most twice a month.
That's it.
And then they're living the dream here. They literally they came here on holiday and they decided, let's move here, and they just drove around a few different towns and just found somewhere where they wanted to settle, and they felt Ballycastle was for them. So that was simple as that.
One of the other things, Julia, I just want to touch on as well was, obviously you're based in Lurgan, so there's quite a few areas around, obviously, here. Is there a difference in terms of price point depending on, the areas that are around?
There is. You'll get that even in Lurgan. So, when you're doing your valuation, the basic start of it is price per square foot, and that will depend on different developments, even in Lurgan, without leaving the town. Some areas will be higher than others, and that'll come down to the location of where it is, the builder maybe that was on site, the condition of the development as you drive in, knowing who the neighbours are. There's a million factors to take in there. Is it all privately owned? Is some of it rented? Is some of it social housing? All of that creates the picture. Is there a derelict house sitting next door to the one that you're selling? So there's a lot of things go into the valuation and the price, but they'll change from development in Lurgan, and that will be the same for Craigavon, Moira, Marlin, for them all. The same in every town, yeah.
And the other, just that you're touching on house prices there and valuations and stuff like that there, I'm curious to know, as you list a property, for example, for a certain price, have you seen where people are bidding less, or is it 9 times out of 10 there's actually what the price is being listed for, the valuation that people are actually paying more for the property?
There's a bit less bidding I found in the last sort of 3-4 months, where they'll achieve their asking price instead of it going up above that. So yes, but if it's extra special house, it'll go to bidding. So it's individual on the house. What's with it is is there garage, is it in the country? There's different things in demand, bungalows. So, but mostly they will. It's very not very often it won't hit its asking price. So most times it'll hit it, and then if we're lucky enough, it'll go to bidding above that.
I think it also comes back to a lot of the vendors. A lot of vendors are fair and reasonable. Mm-hmm. I remember, as you were talking about the last recession in the early 2000s, I'll go as far as to say maybe sellers were greedy, and they were looking more and more money, whereas now a seller, if they get anywhere around their asking price, it hits their target, it allows them to move on to their new house, and so be it. And that's maybe, I would hear gripes sometimes with people saying, the house, I was on the market, I was booked in for a viewing, and then it's went sale agreed. But it's completely up, as you say, it's up to the seller. They can close it at any time, they can accept any offer, whether it's more or less than what the asking price is, and it's completely up to them.
And there's the circumstances too. So if you have a first time buyer, a cash bidder, you don't want to lose them compared to somebody who's in a chain with 3 or 4 houses to sell. So it's down to circumstance, and if the owners are not in a rush, they might leave it on a wee bit longer to see, but you don't want it on the market. We want it sale agreed within 2 to 4 weeks. We don't want it on longer because it starts to go stale. You will get your viewings and your offers in those first sort of 2 weeks. The longer period is just let people in for second viewings and to bring parents, so you don't want it on any longer than that. You want it gone within that time.
And I actually just want to look back round, just I was sitting there thinking about the staging side of things. Like, how key do you feel that, because I can kind of see it now from my background of marketing, how important the photographs are. Do you feel that the majority of people will buy a house based on the photographs?
Yeah. We can write anything in the description and they don't read it. They will not read it. They'll read it after the viewing maybe, or as the pictures have caught their eye and caught their attention, or the videos or the drone. Then when they're so excited waiting on their viewing, they might read it then. But the first thing is always the pictures. Pictures or the video, yeah.
Because it's funny, because I know just even from me starting to do this, more and more, it seems to be more and more property is cropping up on my feeds, obviously with what I'm looking at. But it's the photographs that are just consistently catching your eye, and it, as Roy I think mentioned there, that staging side of things is becoming such a big big thing.
Massively. And the younger buyers, when I say younger, you know, we're not talking 17 or 18, the younger buyers, maybe under 30, they want it right. So they don't want to be doing work that they want it finished off right. They don't want to be going in and doing a new kitchen. They want that presented right. They want the light coming through it. They know where to ask where the sun is, whereas they wouldn't have asked me years ago, where's the sun? You know, they want all of that to be right, and they know what they want now. So the presenting it, having it clean and presented well is everything. It will get you so much more money for your house because it will get into bidding. You know, they'll want to be viewing it before anybody else. They're happy to go to bidding. You know, it just makes life so much easier for us on yourselves.
I was going to say, you know, the only difficulty I find with it is whenever I look at them photos, I find it very difficult for me to envisage me being able to keep a house like that.
You're not as tidy as that.
You know, the nice place settings and stuff and all, you know, I think that's great, but I reckon if I was to ship in with my ones, it would last maybe 2 days.
You only have to have it tidy on days of viewings, don't worry about it any other time.
Why is it always, yeah, you always have to tidy the house when someone's coming around, like, you know.
The panic, yeah.
The panic. In terms of my question, that's everything that, you know, in terms of the areas that I've covered. Is there anything else that's kind of cropping up that you're thinking about, Roy, or?
Yeah, no, Julie's hit the points.
I think that's everything I had in my head as well.
Yeah. You know, as I say, in terms of that estate agent side of things, you know, you're going to be dealing with your buyers, you're going to be dealing with your sellers. There's a full process goes on behind the scenes that, you know, it's not a case of I want to sell my house, put a sign outside my house here, and I expect an offer in a week's time. You know, it's not really that side. There's more to it than that. And in terms of, you know, the NI market and stuff, we're constantly keeping an eye on it. Yous have already says that yous are the experts. You're working in it day in, day out. You know, you're seeing the changes, you're seeing exactly what's going on, you're seeing what properties are in demand, who's coming through, who's buying what. You know, so if anyone out there is interested, obviously, in buying their first property or even selling, make sure to speak to the experts whenever it comes around to that time. So in terms of that is episode, I'm going to forget again, 15. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Julie, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Great to get that insight as well. Thanks, Roy, again, for turning up. As always. And we'll catch you in the next episode then.
Thank you.
Thank you.